This is Jenny Kunkel, and in this video we are going to create a stored procedure and then use that stored procedure within a trigger. And a trigger is essentially going to be associated to a specific table, and it's also going to be something that we can indicate when we want it to fire. So execute this code after we insert a record. Execute the code after we update a record. Execute the code after we delete a record from the database. So when we set that firing condition, it's going to happen after we specify something or instead. So we can say after an action query that we want to have happen or instead of the action query, and we can replace the functionality of the default action to do something. With our instead of triggers, those are typically used to provide for updatable views. And they can also be used to prevent errors such as constraint violations before they actually occur. For our example, we are going to be using the dbo.pilot table that we loaded into the Northwinds database. Right now, we also have our pilot cert table, and we have an associated number of certs for various pilots. We want to do a better job of trying to keep track of the number of certs that we have for pilots, and we want to add a column to our dbo.pilot table and get the count and keep it maintained on that parent record. In order to do that, we're going to add the column, we're going to write a stored procedure, we're going to do an initial execution of our stored procedure to get everything as far as the counts to start updated, and then we're going to add the trigger and have our trigger pretty much maintain that field. So anytime that we would insert or delete a pilot cert from that pilot cert table, then we would go ahead and update the number of certs that are in that pilot table. So this is not an uncommon type of action that we might want to do with a stored procedure in a trigger. We're going to go ahead and open a new window, and we want to go ahead and add that column. We want to make sure that we are pointing to the Northwinds database. Then I'm going to copy in my DDL for creating the column. We've already covered that. This is essentially going to add the total certs to the DBO pilot, and it's going to provide it with a default value of 0. So I'm going to go ahead and execute that. Then I'm going to essentially comment this out so I can select everything and not necessarily worry that I'm going to try to add the same field twice. Now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and drop our procedure, and the procedure that we're going to be writing is to update total certs. So this is going to be drop proc if exists sp update total certs. Then we want to go ahead and execute a go statement, because if we don't, then that's going to be a problem, because our create for our procedure needs to occur in a separate batch. Then we're going to go ahead and do a create procedure, and this is going to be our sp update total certs. For our total certs, we want to have one input parameter, and this is going to be pilot null. And this is going to be of type int, and we're going to set it to an initial value of null. We want to define that optional parameter with a default value of null. And we'll talk about that as we code our query here. So this is going to be begin, and then I'm going to have my end block as well. So that's going to be my procedure starting place. And I also want to go ahead here and set my no count on, so it doesn't print out the rows that are impacted when it does something. I want to go ahead and declare a cursor, because I want to iterate based off of what is provided, either the pilot null. I'm still going to execute the cursor, Or if I have null coming in, then that basically means that I want to iterate through all of the rows in the table and update them. So I'm going to use my cursor to do this, declaring it. I'm going to call this certs underscore cursor. This is of type cursor. For, and then we have our select statement. And we are essentially going to select pilot null, and then the count as the total certs. This is going to be from the dbo.pilot cert table, where either the pilot null is null, or the pilot no column is equal to the @pilot no field. So this is going to be either this condition is true or this condition. So if it's null for that input parameter, then it's going to get everything. If it's populated, then it's only going to get that specific pilot number. And we need to also group by our pilot no field. Once we've done that, we can go ahead and take care of opening our certs cursor. We also want to go ahead and fetch our certs cursor into our @pilot no. And then we also need to declare another field that we can select into, and this is going to be for our total certs. This is going to be @total certs of type int. Copy in this, add it down here, and terminate that statement. Now, while our @fetch status is not equal to -1, we want to go ahead and iterate. So we're going to begin and end here. We want to go ahead and update our dbo.pilot. We want to set the total certs equal to our @total certs, where the pilot no is equal to the @pilot no. Then, of course, at the bottom of our loop, we want to go ahead and do the fetch again. If we don't, then we're just essentially going to have an endless loop. After our while loop, then we want to go ahead and close our cursor. And then deallocate the certs cursor as well. Now it's indicating that that's not a column. If we go ahead and refresh it and look at our table, we see that we have that total certs. So even though it's showing red here, that is actually in the table at this point. So we shouldn't be concerned about that error that we're seeing there. We want to go ahead and execute everything that we have now. We see that our procedure is actually created at this point. We would want to go ahead and run this against everything that's in that actual table here. And we can do that by executing our procedure and essentially passing in null for our pilot no. So I'm going to go ahead and just put in a little bit of a separator so we know where our execution is starting at. We're going to go ahead and declare our @pilot in variable. It's going to be of type int, and we're going to set it to initial value of null. Then we're going to execute our stored procedure. This is going to be sp update total certs, and passing in our pilot in value. Then if we go ahead and do a select from our dbo.pilot table, we should be able to see initially that our values in the table are 0. Let's go ahead and execute our procedure here. It's successfully completed. If we look at it again, we should see that we have values populated in that column. Now we want to go ahead and create our trigger that's going to be responsible for making sure that the total count of certs in that pilot table is maintained. We're going to go ahead and do a drop trigger if exists. We're going to call our trigger TRG. Typically, we're using that as a prefix for our triggers, and then this is going to be update pilot. Because we're creating it and it needs to be created in a separate batch, we're adding our go and then going ahead and creating our trigger. I'm going to copy the trigger name. And I want to trigger it after an insert on that table or after a delete on that table. So my trigger action is going to be after insert and delete. And this is going to be as, and we can go ahead and begin and end. It's our block. And then within our trigger, we need to declare a variable. This is going to be our pilot number, and this is going to be an integer. We need to get that value. And the way that we can get the value is based off of an inserted table or a deleted table. So anytime somebody inserts something into the database in a table, it's going to save whatever that record is into the inserted table. If we change something, it's also going to place something into that inserted table. Whatever those changes are that were made are going into the inserted table. When we delete something from the database table, then we are going to have something available in a deleted table. And if we change something, then the old values are going to be in that deleted table. There's only going to be one row in it. We're not going to worry about anybody else's data. It's just for our session that has that value, and we can just select that one row, get it back, and process it. So this is going to be something where I can check to see if it's going to exist in my inserted table. If it's in the inserted table, I know it inserted something. If it's in the deleted table, then I know that it deleted something. I don't have to worry about the change because my trigger is not firing on an update. So this is going to be if exists, select asterisk from inserted. So I know that I'm an insert at this point, so I can just go ahead and select my pilot no, specifying my pilot variable equal to the column. It's going to have the exact same columns that are in my database table from inserted. So even though I'm specifying that I'm getting that record from inserted, it's going to have all the same columns that are going to be in my DBO pilot cert. So I can specify that I want to grab one. Again, I'm only getting one row return, and I can get that value and set my pilot number. Else, I'm going to do essentially the exact same thing. So I'm going to copy this, and this is going to be from the deleted table. Now that I have my pilot number, I can go ahead and execute my stored procedure. This is going to be dbo.sp update total certs, passing in my pilot number, and that should take care of it. Now I can go ahead and execute my trigger when I insert something, but right now I've just compiled it. If I want to go ahead and select everything from the pilot cert table, I can do that because I just want to pick something and write an insert statement here. So maybe for pilot number 1, maybe I want to give them access to an A321. Okay, so I can go ahead and write my insert statement. for my pilot no, my plain type code, and then also my cert date. Passing in values. For my pilot no, that's 1. Then my plain type code is going to be A321. And then the cert date, we'll just use the getDate function. So if I go ahead and I insert, let's go ahead and take a look at the count for pilot 1 right now. So we have our select statement here. Let's add a where clause to this. We have 2. Then if we go ahead and run our insert statement down here, if our trigger fires correctly, we should see that now we have 3 on our count, which we do. Now if we go ahead and delete from our pilot cert, delete this value. And if we go back up and execute our select statement, we should see that it's back down to 2. So this is our walkthrough for trying to use a procedure in conjunction with a trigger. Our next walkthrough, we're going to do a little bit more complex trigger using some exception handling, and then look at insert, update, and changes as well.